fellow Canadian. I'm from Toronto, though I currently find myself in quarantine in Los Angeles. We're thrilled to be here. This has been really an incredible journey, bringing coParenter into to the public. As Diana mentioned, we started this as a child well-being platform. We have always been a social venture with a double bottom line focused on improving child well-being. Our mission has always been to eliminate high conflict divorce from the list of adverse childhood experiences. And we, really believe that this is a culmination of a lot of our life's work. This platform is designed, was originally designed to help families and help parents de-escalate conflict, optimize their relationship, make their relationship better, which helps everybody. And part of making the relationship better is resolving disputes and minimizing issues as they come up, as opposed to having issues and bringing them to court or letting them escalate. So that access to an on-demand subject matter expert or mediator or coach has always been a central tenet to the platform that we've created. And we've been so fortunate to work with Diana and the RJFS and the Alberta community in helping to refine and define what this tool ultimately has become. Certainly the days of coronavirus have spun this organization, coParenter, in ways we never imagined possible. And the tool that we use to deliver these mediation services to our users is now very much being adopted by people in the field, by private practitioners who are wishing to help support the folks who need help. Judge Ellsworth will be able to talk a bit about how this platform is being used and has been adopted by the domestic violence community to really address some of the key issues, monitoring and helping parents evolve and educate and learn how to move past, especially for perpetrators, many of whom have been victims themselves, but helping them to learn, new behaviors and to better enhance the relationship between those parents in an effort to help them do what's best for their kids. We're super honored to be working with everybody here, and I look forward to seeing a great demo.
There is an emulator of the coParenter apps running on my computer so that everyone can see from my computer how it all works. And what we will do is go through some of the key features of coParenter and each area that makes sense for everyone. Eric, is there an area specifically you want to start with?
Yeah, this is Eric. My role, in addition to being a co-founder and CEO, I basically play a product lead, product manager type of a role. And so as we go through this demo, both Niels and I, Niels is going to lead the charge and I'll do more color commentary. Niels, I think, let's start off with do kind of like a high level feature overview and just, get over to the menu and kind of talk about like everything, start off with messaging and kind of the day-to-day communication of users, and then we'll let it flow from there.
Sure, sounds good. So when you first log into the app, this is kind of what we call our home screen, where you will have your notifications here. Notifications can include a new message from a client, so from your co-parent. So for instance, I'm just going to go from my other phone here and send a message. And you can see, in real time, what will happen is I sent a message. If you're on the screen, you'll be notified that there's a new message from your co-parent. You'll also get a push notification that'll show up if the app is closed. So there's no way of missing, your messages from your co-parent. There's two ways you can get in there: is to either click on the message here or click on the balloon you'll see at the top right. That will open up all your conversations that you have. Right now, I just have the one conversation with my co-parent. If you have mediations going on, this is also a place that you'll see them. And in addition to that, what we will talk about in a bit is adding your team members to coParenter. So if you have your nanny or your lawyer, for instance, could use a tool, they'll be able to have those conversations here sorted and displayed as well. One other feature people have asked is the ability to create an additional conversation between, where you can give it a subject line so that maybe they just want to talk about a specific item. They can create a new conversation, start it, communicate, and then close that conversation. Throughout the app, we've also tried to make it more user-friendly for that first-time person come in. They can click these a notification here, and they click on it, and it'll pop up, and you'll see these pulsating dots. If you click on it, it'll give a little bit of information about what you're seeing here. So you can see this is the date, shows you how to get transcripts, and who you're talking to, for instance, and then also the conversation I showed earlier. So I'll go into an existing conversation. I click on the name, it comes up, and here is a conversation between me and my co-parent. And it's as easy as like using text messaging. I can say, I can send a message, comes through, no problem. And this is all recorded on our back-end system. They cannot be modified. It's time-based, stamped, so that you have a record of when that conversation happens. And also, when and if your co-parent has read the message by the little check mark indicator here that these messages were actually read on the other side.
So this is Eric. I want to hop in real quick and talk a little bit about some of the implications of this. So, one of the main ways that users get on our platform is they're ordered onto the platform from a judicial activity. And a lot of times those orders will mandate that they only use this platform for communication. Especially in some of the higher conflict case types that we deal with. That's very important. And so, knowing that the users are on a platform that both has an uneditable record of what was actually said, as well as knowing that that can be monitored also using our Pro tool in real time, brings a new level of accountability and communication that, especially in high conflict cases, wasn't always there. And especially for victims of domestic violence, what we've heard reported out from users in that case, that they have a higher feeling of safety knowing that the communication is available as a transcript and even can be monitored. One other feature that we have is a language filter. So Niels, you want to show that real quick?
Excuse my language here.
So what is popping up is, notification of, and we actually put a lot of thought into this messaging in terms of first of all, we have a lot of sophistication in terms of the types of language we can filter against. So it's not just individual words, but it could be phrases, and it could be, we have a lot of control over that on the back end. But it also, we present the user the option on whether or not they want to send that or not. And we know that this makes a difference in communication with our users. I've had users tell me that this has saved them. They know a lot of time and money from something that they would have regretted when they were in a very emotional state. So it really is kind of a subtle but a very powerful feature that makes a difference in helping to reduce conflict in families, especially in those cases where you just might be in a very heated state, and we help to calm you down. Makes sense.
Yeah, no problem. And then you're able to also send, files, which include sending a camera image, a PDF, or an image you've stored on your phone already. So if I use my camera, I can come in, take a photo, Get a photo of the cat here. We'll send it. So that it's uploaded, and then that photo is part of the conversation as well.
So again, this is all part of the day-to-day management of and management of the relationship. Just part of what we have done from a design philosophy perspective is try to make it as easy as possible to do the basic things that people need to do when they're raising kids in multiple households.
Okay. And when you click the little navigation, or you can also slide your finger across and bring this over, is our main menu on the left here. So another key area that makes us unique from others is that we have live mediation. You want to go into that a little bit, Eric?
Yeah, I want to get there, but let's show some of the other stuff first. Like one of the things that is actually really quite valuable is the kids info bank. Certainly in the US, and it's a very common area of conflict, is when one party is kind of holding information hostage. So that information could be, doctor's information, or maybe the health insurance cards or things like that. So we've built the capacity to store all that information where you need it, in an app that you use to manage the day-to-day reality of your life. And also, upload your insurance card, provide school information and things like that. And that's shared automatically between both co-parents. And then, as Niels mentioned, one of the key differentiators for us is that ability to get on-demand help to address an issue. And there's several different ways to get help. One, and let's go ahead and start a mediation. One of the things, you can get one-on-one coaching. So if you've got a question and you want to get coaching, you can start a coaching session. And then Judge Ellsworth and her team, and I definitely, Judge, want to hear from you in terms of talking about how you guys work in mediation and the types of cases that you handle. But what we've tried to do is make it as easy as possible to narrowly identify a specific issue. What we are not here to do is mediate an entire relationship or entire separation, but we're here to resolve specific parenting issues that come up time and time again. Certainly in the US, we know that as much as 80% of all of the motions that come in front of the courts, in the family courts, are parenting issues more often than legal issues. And so part of our objective is to empower parents to resolve their own parenting issues. If they need help, then we've got on-demand help available with Judge Ellsworth and her team. So Judge, you want to talk a little bit about kind of what you've designed here from a mediation model perspective?
Certainly. Thank you. This is such a genuine pleasure to be speaking with all of you today. A little bit later on, we'll talk about domestic violence and how important it is, and how we're handling that. But this is the steps that led up to that. In our mediation, we've created a unique situation that is being extremely successful. Eric set it up by saying it's issue driven. So we take a conflict or a coaching opportunity, and we have the individual who's requesting the assistance, or the two that are coming on board for a mediation, to strip it down to a singular issue. That issue might be something very complicated, like a COVID-19 assessment and parenting plan, where one party wants to shelter at home and the other party wants the shelter at two homes. It can be as complicated as that, or as simple as a lot of acrimony over whether or not the bicycle stays at one home or the other home. Regardless, what happens within the context of this model is, and we have found, that when people do not have to be in the same place, see the body language of the other person, whether it is low conflict, high conflict, or certainly something that's a different animal altogether than those monikers, domestic violence, there is great ease and ability to confer and mediate and to feel safe when you actually are safe in your own home, without somebody intimidating you or harassing you, or just in your space, somebody that's really hurt you. And so by stripping it down to an issue, a singular issue, by the mediator being the driver, in other words, if they're in mediation, there's not crosstalk where an individual co-parent will respond to the other co-parent. The mediator's trained to stop that, put that back on messaging, and to allow for the co-parenters to have a dialogue with and at the mediator. And then we are all about getting to the first agreement as quickly as possible, whether that agreement is just we agree to use one of the features, for example, messaging as our primary way of communicating. And so we are very successful and do complicated things and less complicated things. Everything's complicated when people aren't getting along, but less complicated things with a text format that has some rigidity in it because it's issue driven and it's also driven by the mediator. A coaching session is a little bit more laxed in that it's just one party. But I think anything else to that, again, I want to reserve the domestic violence until we're finished with the demo and talk about that, unless you want me to talk about it now. But I think we can talk about it later.
Yeah, I think as we close up, I want to make sure we get kind of the breadth of the features.
Yeah, I think so
thanks,
too.
that's perfect. And so what you're seeing on screen with Niels, there's two screens. So the mobile device is what the consumers use. Our Pro Tool is what Judge Ellsworth and her team and some of our other partners who are delivering services over the platform use to deliver those services. So this is a browser-based app, very simple to implement. We've already done a training for the 11 mediators that'll be supporting the RFJS initiative. And the whole idea here is that on-demand access, and it's not immediate, but it's really quick, and Judge and her team do a good job of being responsive to really address those particular issues as they come up. So, the mediation process or the coaching process are all, quite similar. One of the other things on the tool that is a very powerful feature is our parenting time schedule tool. So, Niels, you want to maybe segue over into that?
Sure. So the professional has the ability to create a parenting time schedule, so I can also do it from here, but normally someone would come in and request to create one. So we come in, create a parenting time schedule. We have a set of basic templates that have already been created, and if there isn't one, the mediator has the ability to build one completely from scratch. So I'll just take a common one here, the 50-50, and different colors differentiate who has the children that day. So dark blue is myself, light blue is my co-parent. The split is the exchange days, and they're at 4 o'clock, but I can also modify that to say this one on this day is at 6, and I can submit that and then change that. We can also add same day visits. So every other Tuesday, there's a same day visit. So I'm going to insert a visit, and this one goes from 4 to 6. And now you have this little circle within the circle designating that we have a same day visit. I can have the description. I can completely customize that to give more information for that, and pick which children this parenting time schedule can be for. If you have really complicated situations where maybe 2 of the 3 children go with one co-parent, maybe there's another co-parent that is involved, or maybe this child doesn't go with the other co-parent, you have the option of picking which children are part of the schedule. Also, we have different types of schedules. So you have your default that goes on for the the cycle of the schedule, but we all know that there can be different schedules during different times of the year, including like now there may be a COVID-19 type schedule that modifies based on the situation here. But right now, we have our spring and winter break and our summer breaks. So we could have one that's just specifically for this year, for the summer, that they can both agree upon. So I'll do a default, give it a starting date of when this starts. So we'll say this is going to start May 1st, and this one will end, we'll say, until July 31st. And then I can submit it. And then you'll see here on the tool, they now see this schedule that was created for them, and then they can come in and see the exchange days that happen. the same day visits, details, and then they can either agree or disagree that this makes sense. If they disagree, then the conversation usually goes through and the judge can talk a little bit more about how the process goes, but normally, make a few more tweaks and everyone's happy, they agree, and then this now is part of an agreement for this parent time schedule for these specific date ranges, and it's added to their calendar.
So, go ahead and you want to add it in. Part of what is so interesting about what this particular feature represents for us is we look at what stage of the separation process this family might be in. So if they're in that very early stage where they've just realized that, they are in fact on their way to separation and things aren't working out, that's such an intense time. Emotions are so rough, and generally they have no idea that a parenting time schedule is a thing, let alone that they need to start really thinking about, this level of detail about where the kid's going to be on a given day and how they're going to handle exchanges and things like that. And so, when we're able to get involved with those early stage type cases, it makes a huge difference in helping to reduce conflict in that particular family. Judge can talk to a lot of the anecdotes of cases where people have come to her, in a high state of stress because they just, it's just such a hard time. And so just getting some foundational reality in place in terms of knowing that this part of the relationship and the schedule for the kids is sorted makes a huge difference. I don't know, Judge, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because every time I have a demo, I don't have to make this up. I'm currently mediating people about co-sleeping and the argument that's going on about whether a new girlfriend can co-sleep, etc. So I will put away my mediation for a minute. This parenting, it's true, it happens every single time I do a demo. I think that I would like to share with you one anecdotal story because I think it really captures it all. Prior to it, I'll say that being able to it's more than just being able to have a plan. It's the idea that they can visualize the plan, because people throw numbers at them, 32250 this, people want, or when I got my divorce, this or that, or you should go for the 80-20 so you get more child support. Being able to look at and assist people with their real schedule, their real availability, their real time needs, and seeing it and visualizing it is extremely helpful to individuals. I worked on a case out of your province, and it was two people had met briefly, had an affair of sorts because they both had other relationships and other children. Their child was born prematurely. They were no longer in a relationship. The child had a lot of health issues, and they needed to coordinate time for siblings and family members and these two people that were really strangers except for this brief encounter on the grieving and how to deal with going to the hospital. And we were able to, by using the parenting plan, do a 3-week plan, and they were going to follow up if they needed help. And after that, just having that plan in place made all the difference. So there's dramatic things, and then there's just people that really don't know. They say, well, give us whatever we're supposed to have. And I say, well, let's take a look at what you need and not what you're supposed to have, because there's really none of that. So it's a great tool.
And there's a lot of other stuff for users that, pay attention to calendars and, maybe, depending on the professional life, et cetera, will sync with their existing calendar system. You can create appointments so that if, you've got a parent-teacher conference that you need to have your co-parent join, that's easy to do. If you want to sign the kid up for music classes or maybe to play sports, hockey season starting and all that good stuff, all of that is available in the system. And again, that's part of our goal of helping to make the day-to-day reality of raising kids in multiple households as easy as possible. I think Neil's showing the request module might be a good path too.
Sure.
So, communication, as we know, is always a challenge. Parents that only communicate during messaging, oftentimes that's an easy way to get heated again. So we came up with the idea, I think this is originally Jonathan's idea, of a request module, which is a very simple, focused communication tool to try to, only make a request that is specific and actionable. So, you know, if we want to sign somebody up to play hockey, it's a sports request. I'm going to select my co-parent, and it's for, you know, Steve, who's going to, you know, start hockey season next year. Now, here's when it's a repeating activity because he's got practice on, you know, Tuesdays and Thursdays. You know, it starts on this. So it's all the specific details of what needs to happen, including a financial aspect, right? If they need help paying for gear and the league and all that good stuff. So we have the capacity to get in and make this specific business-like request. I mean, this is one of our kind of subtle education tools to help train folks on, you know, what is effective in terms of getting things done. You know, it doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out story of why it's so important for Steve to play hockey. But let's get down to the specifics of what is effective in terms of communication. And then, you know, your co-parent then has the access to, you know, accept, reject, or counteroffer, or if you need help, then you can escalate that up to a mediator to discuss. And so, you know, this tool really has a lot of sophistication in here to help make these, you know, types of requests very business-like, and then, you know, to make progress on it, to try to get it done and get in, you know, there's all kinds of request types that are done in the system. So it's a feature that, you know, has turned into a real important element of the app, and it's great to see our users use it. Niels, you want to talk a little bit about your team stuff?
Yeah, so as we mentioned earlier, you may have not just your co-parenter on the app, but you could also invite someone to your team. You go into your connections, you add a connection here, and you could say, you know, I could invite if I had multiple co-parents, so I could invite a team member, give it the name, you know, and create an invite, and then all I need is, you know, an email or an SMS to send to them. And then once they've accepted and joined the app, okay, what am I sharing here? I can say I'm going to send them through a message here.
And this is just a normal kind of share dialogue that is either Android or iPhone.
Yeah, and then you have a new message, you go through the process, it'll send an SMS to them. They'll get a deep link, they can download the app. Team members are always free, and then they can continue to use the app and do conversations and view the calendar, and you know, other features that you know, you can decide what you want your team member to participate in.
So the idea behind your team is, you know, especially if you're in a higher conflict situation, but even if you're not, you know, going through a separation is hard. Your friends, your family members, if you're fortunate enough to be able to, you know, work with a lawyer, or you have people that help with childcare, you know, those are the kind of folks that should have a team member account. So that
and in the future, I want to add advocates as we think about this in the context of domestic violence, advocates,
Yep.
caseworkers, and other individuals.
Absolutely. And so, you know, as we, you know, there's two, I want to make sure that we share the check-in feature and the journal. I think, so let's start with check-in first, and then we'll go to journal. And then from journal, I think we'll segue into talking about kind of the DV, about how this is used in DV cases. And then I think that'll conclude the demo part, and we can kind of get into the you know, any ongoing discussion and questions. So
you can check in here. It's real easy. It keeps, here's some previous check-ins, but if I was on my mobile device at a location where I'm gonna pick up the kids, I need to, you know, have almost like a signature receipt of that location that I'm actually there. I come in, you know, give me the address. I can leave a note. I can also share that with my co-parent as well, so that they have a record of it. And then I check in, and then now, as you see here, 12:38, it recorded it. You know, I'm not really at Google's headquarters, but that's where my GPS is from my phone. But yeah, and then now you have a check-in record for that can also, if needed for court, can be created a transcript, and this will create a transcript of all your check-ins that have the GPS location, the address, and date and time stamps ready to go. And
so this feature is designed to address a very common issue, especially here in the States, where, you know, somebody in court fighting about somebody always being late for pickup and drop off. And Judge Ellsworth, you know, has a French fry order issue, which is, okay, go to McDonald's for your exchanges, buy a small order of fries and save your receipt so that the next time you're back in here fighting about it, I'll have some evidence and some proof of where you were with, or if you were where you said you were supposed to be. So this totally alleviates that. And, you know, this is only a single GPS pin drop, and we're not tracking other than whenever you push that check-in feature. And we'll come back to this because this is used in a pretty innovative way in some of the DV cases that are on the platform. Then, you know, the other thing that we have, another feature, and there's certainly more to the app, you know, there's an expense module for expense management. But what I think is also pretty compelling is the journal feature. You know, this is something that both courts and users have really requested, which is exactly what it sounds like, which is the capacity to keep in, you know, add journal entries to the app. And so, you know, Judge, you could talk a little bit about how you used to order journals and, you know, your thinking behind getting this feature in.
Yeah, well, I think this is a super effective tool on a number of levels. Once people leave a court or leave a shelter or leave a place of safety or leave a regimen of how they're going to go about living the rest of their lives, it's really important to give them a function or something. I used to have them journal in like a notebook, like a kid's spiral notebook. And part of the journaling was to keep record of the happenings of what's going on, not just their feelings to be able to be supportive, but he has called me 3 times today, and or this is I felt like somebody was watching me, or any number of things. We argued again at the pickup and drop off. It is a really good way of putting. We don't get videos, and so this takes it to the best level of 3-dimensional as to what real life is for the individual and what's really going on. Because if you just read things on paper as a judge or even as an advocate, it doesn't have the life that sometimes we need to have. And this is a really important function to allow for us to put meat on the bone, or to make it more real and to see what everyday happenings are. And that's the reason why we have this. I think it's a super effective tool to have it right there, especially if law enforcement is involved or something else.
I do want to have you spend a little bit of time talking about, you know, kind of your background and experience from a DV perspective, and then we can talk about how this tool is used in the misdemeanor domestic violence cases here in the States. So
I will tell you this, that I was on the bench, was the presiding judge, Riverside County, which is right in the middle of wonderful indigenous people areas as well. The San Manuel and Saboba and Pachanga and Morongo were all there, and we've worked as when I was presiding judge in a collaborative sort of way with domestic violence and how to reach out and coordinate between tribal courts and state courts, that issue. But more importantly, for over 30 years, I've worked in the area of domestic violence. I've started some of the first family law domestic violent court in the U.S. I have continued to be faculty member and teach with the National Council of Judges from Family and Juvenile and the National Judicial College. I teach internationally and nationally on the topic of dealing with domestic violence and trying to teach judges the nuance that those of us that have worked in the community for a very long time understand. I was the chair of California's Violence Against Women's institution and judicial education for over 8 years, and I continue to be a participant in all those activities, including Giffords Guns Foundation, and have an opportunity to teach lawyers and mediators and a whole group of people with regard to that, and collaboratively work on education programs for domestic violence. So I have a strong background, and what was very important to me, and of course it was to my co-founders and partners as well, that we got this right from a domestic violence view that we were not doing anything within this coParenter app that we were creating that would exacerbate the harassment capability, the terrorizing, or even the lethality risk. So as we're building this all along, a question was asked each and every feature. How will this be used for or against somebody who's a victim who has yet not been identified or has been identified? And we found, because we have long wanted to create a app that was very insightful as to the needs of the domestic violence, both the survivors and the abusing spouse or partner and survivor children, that a wonderful collateral consequences come from this, and that we are able to use this for that community and use it very well. I will turn the time back over to you, Eric, to talk about Bonner County and show what's going on, and I'll give some color to that if I feel like I need to interject.
Sure thing.
So I'll turn it back to you.
So the coParenter, as it sits right now, is being used in misdemeanor domestic violence cases. The way that it works is there's an order that goes to the offender. The victim is offered the opportunity to get on and, presented with some of the benefits in terms of, messaging being monitored and, tracked and all that, provides a new level of safety. And that monitoring is actually done by a probation officer. Probation officer works inside the Pro Tool and has access to check-in activity. The officer has access to monitor communication and can even directly communicate with users on the app if they so desire. What we've heard is, pretty powerful on a couple of different dimensions. One, certainly from a victim's perspective, that feeling of safety and comfort is enhanced because they know that they're not on their own and that there actually is somebody out there that is doing more than just checking in on a probation visit, every other week or whatever the schedule might call for. But it also has been a very powerful tool for the probation officers themselves, who can really start to educate the offender on how their behavior is contributing to the issue. This type of language might be controlling or what have you. And it was a very nice surprise to see how that crew is using the tool to really make a difference on the day-to-day stuff. So it's been very positive, very well received. There's things we do to provide privacy and security. One of the features we have is called solo mode, where even if the co-parent isn't on the platform, we can communicate with them via text messaging through a private number, a generic number, so there's no way to track it back to the user that's using it. So there's a lot of things and thought that we put in from a safety and perspective that really is being used quite well in those case types. And then the last thing you can see in the featured articles, we've got a lot of content that we put up there ourselves. We've got, I think, over 1,000 articles that we publish, and can have the capacity to put a lot of content up there as needed. So that, in terms of how check-in is used in these DV cases, one particular case that we're aware of, the father, who is the offender in that case, has to be at a certain location for supervised visits. And so the probation officer actually has him check into those visits using the check-in feature so that they can verify that, in fact, he is following his orders. So there's a lot of flexibility in how the tool is used, but that was a pretty interesting use case that we were very interested to see. And with that,
I'll let you questions. Let me just add this one last thing, is that then in the mediation, so the judges ordered peaceful contact, and we all know what that means. It's a very complicated phrase. They actually can have a mediator who's trained in domestic violence to be able to do the chat with them, the mediation, and keep it safe for both sides. The coaching then is for a behavior modification on the abuser side, and safety planning and support for the survivor.